Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Be a Better You podcast. My name is Allison K. Dagny. I am your host. I am your subconscious healing expert, and I am here to share with you all the things that I can to help you on your healing journey. Now, I have been out of my abusive relationship for 7 years, and I can tell you that when I first filed for divorce and got a new place to live and started the whole process of learning what it was going to be like after emotional abuse, I thought things were going to be immediately better. And in some ways they were, because I was no longer in the same household with my abuser, and I was no longer in such a heightened state of anxiety and emotional dysregulation. But I will say that there was a lot of things that happened in those years following that I didn't expect. And no one can really prepare you for what that's like, because each person's situation is going to be different. But you have this hope that the difficult thing that you're about to do, leave your marriage or leave your relationship or whatever, is going to give you some immediate relief. And that is good, right, to have that hope. But at least for me and a lot of the people who I know, there's other things that happen that we don't know how to handle, and we don't know the best way to manage. And one of those things is post-separation abuse. And that was something I wasn't really expecting. I thought, well, I'm on my own now. I don't have to deal with him anymore. He's not going to tell me what to do. And in some ways that was true. I had a lot of freedoms that I didn't have prior, but we also shared kids. And that was the biggest tug of war that we had happening, because I was parenting on my own time, how I felt was the best way to parent, and then he was parenting in his way. But the problem was we couldn't agree, and we couldn't agree on a lot of those things because for a really long time in my abusive marriage, he was the one calling the shots. He was the one making all the decisions, and I was sometimes, arguing or fighting or trying to get, a little bit of my way, but mostly I would end up giving in and not fighting because I didn't want to rock the boat. I didn't want to listen to several hours of criticisms or get the silent treatments or you name it, right? More abuse. So if you've ever felt like that, no matter how much time passes after you escape or get out of the emotionally abusive relationship, that you're still carrying the pain of what happened, or if you're feeling like that you're stuck because you have triggers and you are being dragged back to court and you are being pulled into smear campaigns, or because your ex won't stop telling you what to do or how to behave or whatever that might be. If you've ever felt like that, and, insert the exhaustion, right? Because you're trying to parent, do all these other things, or, maintain a career or try to find a job. Please know that I understand what this is like. And this is why I wrote my book, Radiate and Rise, Discovering Peace and Power During and After Divorce, because this part of my story is the second part of my first book, When Tears Leave Scars. The first book, When Tears Leave Scars, is all about the abuse, from the time I met my abuser to the time that I escaped. And at that time, I hadn't really gone through a lot of the 7 years of after abuse stuff. I hadn't really experienced much of that yet. So this book is giving you that roadmap. It's telling you how I was able to deal with all this stuff. Now, it wasn't easy. It was very hard. I had never been to court before. I'd never experienced this kind of thing. And having 3 young children at the same time and trying to manage all my other life responsibilities was extremely difficult and very exhausting. So people had been asking for the second book because they want to know, well, what happened? What happened after you escaped? Like all of that, right? Because there is that second part to the story. So this book is really meant for all of you who have felt this way, who have felt like that no matter how much you do and no matter how much time goes by, that now you're still getting pulled into the drama, or you're still getting triggered, or you're still experiencing all these horrible things because of your ex, or because of his family, or because of the court systems, or whatever that might be. So I used to believe that healing wasn't really meant for me, that this was going to be an uphill battle forever. But I was wrong. And today, on the launch of my new book, Radiate and Rise, because it is available out on Amazon today, I want to share exactly what no one tells you about why healing feels impossible and how you can break free from that mindset today. Now, you may have heard me say this before, but I want to share with you one myth that a lot of people go around saying, and you have maybe said it, and I know you've probably heard it, as to why healing feels impossible. And this is it, that time heals all wounds. You've heard this before, I know you have. And maybe some of you are like, yeah, time does heal all wounds. We are told that if we just wait long enough, that eventually we'll feel better. But the truth is, time doesn't heal you, right? The things that you do with the time is what actually does the healing. So it may be that you feel very stuck in your circumstances and situation because of all of the external things that are happening, right? Like another court motion, or something the kids brought back and told you, or an argument with your ex, or you name it, right? So it's like, oh my gosh, is this ever going to end? So you're waiting for validation maybe, or you're waiting for justice, or maybe some sort of closure or something, like it just never ends, right? So you feel like that you're stuck. And what I want you to know is that the subconscious patterns that are created during abuse, right, like rumination and fear and self-doubt, all that stuff are still running in the background even when you leave. And coping, right, is not a long-term strategy to help you actually heal. So if you're just waiting for time to pass, if you aren't addressing the subconscious patterns that have been, running the show for so long, and if you are just coping instead of truly rewiring your thoughts and helping yourself decondition the things that you've been made to believe, then of course you're going to feel stuck, right? So this myth that time heals all wounds, I just want to make sure that you understand that it's not the time that we need, right? Now, time passes no matter what. So yes, we are experiencing time passing, right? I've been out of my abusive relationship for 7 years. But if I never took the action in the direction that I did in order to heal myself, I would still be pretty close to where I was when I originally left. I would still be getting triggered. I would still be having nightmares. I would still be having anxiety attacks. I would still be getting those stomach drops. I would still be a nervous wreck and having my entire body shake and teeth chatter every time I had to go to court. I might even be in a worse position because my emotions would be leading the charge, and that would show up in court, and that would show up with my kids, and that would show up in my relationships, right? So I might actually not even be in the same position. I could be in a worse one. So I think it's really important to know that time isn't the healer here. It's what you do with the time that you have. And if you aren't deliberate about it and you aren't intentionally taking action in the direction of healing, then obviously that time isn't going to matter. So I want to share with you this one thing here that one of my early readers of the book said after reading it. She said, reading about how it's possible to get to the point of being unbothered, less anxious, happy, and without rumination of the past playing out, wishful scenarios of the present, and finding serenity and accepting the things I can't change was a reminder of hope. It is possible to break the cycle. Now, I wanted to share that with you because the thing is that if we are believing that it's not possible to get to a point of being unbothered, and it's not possible to be less anxious, and it's not possible to be happy, and it's not possible to stop ruminating, right? Of course, that's going to be the focus of our mind. That's going to be what we see and what we play out every single day of our lives. Now, there are other episodes that you can go back and listen to, especially the V word. I would encourage you to go back and listen to that one if you haven't. That would be resistance to believing these things, resistance to healing. So if you feel stuck, there could be a good reason that it's because maybe you have limiting beliefs in the way, making you believe that it's not going to happen, it can't be possible for you, or whatever, is one aspect. But the other one could be that you are actually afraid of losing something if you heal, if you move forward, if you are a better version of yourself. And that might sound backwards, but I'm telling you, when it comes to the subconscious mind, the healing that you want and desire is available to you. The only thing in your way is you. And that's the difficult part for a lot of people and a lot of survivors, is knowing what the reason why. What is the block? Why am I blocking myself from this healing? And that takes some deep self-awareness and reflection and willingness to look at. Now, I want to read you a part of my book that really talks about this idea that healing is passive, because it really is not passive. Healing doesn't happen with time. It happens with effort. And so here's what I wrote. On my journey to take my power back and reprogram my subconscious mind, I had reached a place where their judgments couldn't impact me. And in this, I'm speaking about my ex and his family. The accusations, lies, and endless criticisms could no longer penetrate my mind. Their opinions, once treacherous storms that threatened to drown me, were just fat white clouds rolling across a sunny sky. I was different now. I had unlocked the emotional change that had been wrapped around me for so long. Instead of feeling sadness, anger, or resentment, I felt liberated. My self-worth wasn't tied to anyone else's approval, and for the first time, I understood that Nick and his family's hate toward me would never be my burden to carry. My power had been reclaimed, not just over the situation, but most importantly, over my mind and my life. This was my true victory. So I share that with you because I want you to know that healing is an action. It is not going to be something that you just wait for time to heal you. Now, do things get easier over time? Yeah, but some of that can be just, shoving things under the rug. But we have to face our issues. We can't hide from them. If we're hiding from them, we can't heal them, right? You can't fix something if you don't know it's there. Now, I want to help you with this mindset shift that can help you change everything, right? So from shifting from waiting to choosing, like I keep talking about, like we have to get past this idea that healing takes time. Healing isn't something you wait for. Healing is something that you choose to do. So when you take small steps, I talk about this a lot with my clients, take baby steps, right? Intentional steps every day, whether that is shifting your thoughts, whether that's interrupting these old patterns, being aware, or changing the way that you see yourself. any of those things can be a catalyst for transformation. So what I mean by this is you don't have to like jump into the deep end if you don't know how to swim. You can literally just dip your toes in the water. Okay, so let me give you an example of this. I have shared this before. You may have heard it, maybe you haven't, but there was a time when every single time that my ex would send a text message or call or whatever, I would immediately get this horrible gut punch, stomach drop feeling, like every single time. I'm no longer with this person. I no longer report to this person. I no longer have to do what this person says, but yet I'm still physically affected. Now, this is because of the trauma that I experienced and the triggers that are happening that are associated with it. However, I can change that. So I remember sitting in my kitchen one day, and I remember him sending a message and me getting that stomach drop. And at that moment, I remember being so annoyed that, like, why does he have this kind of power over me? Like, this is ridiculous. He's not even in the same vicinity as me. And so because I had already at that time been learning about the subconscious mind and rewiring those old neural pathways, I got to work. Like, I started taking action. I started putting pen to paper. I started identifying my beliefs and what was creating this feeling inside of me, because your thoughts create the feelings, okay? And when I did that, I was able to see very clearly why I was still under his control. And when I did that, then I could start to challenge those beliefs and those thoughts that I had been repeating. And when I did this for several days in a row, one day, out of the blue, he messaged me and I felt absolutely nothing. Even now, to this day, I just got a message from him a couple of days ago. And I don't have that sinking gut feeling anymore. It's literally like if you sent me a text, it would not evoke any sort of physical or emotional response at all. And that's because I was able to rewire my subconscious mind to shift out of this state of fear of every single time I get a message from him. I'm not going to be able to defend myself. He's going to try to hurt me. He's going to gaslight me. I can't think clearly. Like all these crazy beliefs that weren't necessarily true. They were just something I was carrying around with me that was creating this feeling. So I was able to take my power back by taking action, by taking an intentional step, being aware of the things that I think about, putting them on paper. Okay? So that's what I want for you, is to try to take one tiny little step in the direction of your healing. Like, what can you do today? Can you be aware of your thoughts when you're being triggered? Can you pause and say, what am I thinking about here? What am I believing? And is this even true? And can I look at it in a different way? So that is a powerful, powerful way to start your healing journey. And it can really change your life if you choose for it to. You have to make the choice though. And instead of waiting for time to heal, it's like, wait a second, what do I want to do now? I want to choose to do something different. I want to choose to write this story differently. I don't want to think this anymore. I don't want to believe this. What else can I believe? Okay, so I also want to mention here today about what no one tells you about the rising part, the healing part, the expansion part of healing. And the first thing I want to mention here is that it's not about like feeling ready to heal or feeling ready to rise up or feeling ready to be empowered, right? No one really feels ready ever. Like, you rise up, you heal, you radiate, you become empowered, right? And then you realize, wait, I didn't have to wait for this. Like, I actually could have done this sooner. It's the same way as when you do something difficult that you've never done before. And maybe you didn't feel ready at that time, but you did it anyway. Like, for instance, like if you've ever had a child, you know, when they hand you the baby and they're like, okay, go home. You're like, oh my gosh, like they're just going to give me this child. And like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, you've never had a kid before, right? it's a little scary. It's like, oh my gosh, now I'm responsible for this little tiny human. And you weren't ready, but you do it and you figure it out and you make it work. So nobody tells you that that you don't have to feel ready. You just have to do it. You just have to go for it. The other thing is that healing isn't a straight line. It is like a spiral. So I've seen this image before where it looks like a circle spiral on paper. Like if you did a spiral and you did it from the outside to the in or the inside to the out. But if you put it in a 3D form, it looks like a spring almost, like a physical spring that's moving upward. So healing is more spiral than it is linear from like point A to point B. And most people don't tell you that because it can feel very scattered when you're healing. It can feel very discombobulated, and you feel like you go forward and then you go backwards, and like all these like challenges and things that are happening in between. And there are times you will revisit pain, but each time you're going to handle it better and better. You're going to be stronger each time. So nobody really tells you that it's not like A to B, like it isn't. It's more spiral and I like that analogy or that imagery, I guess. Another thing is that the key in healing and rising up against people who've tried to hurt you and against your trauma isn't escaping the past, okay? Because the past you're already out of. You're not even in the past anymore. If you're carrying it with you, that's different, right? So the transformation is how you carry it, okay? And what I mean by this is the perceptions that you have about it, right? So if you had a traumatic experience and you're carrying it into the present and then possibly, thinking about it for the future, then the perception could be that my trauma holds me back, or my trauma is too bad or too awful that I'll never heal, or my trauma is weighing me down, right? But what if you didn't think of it that way? What if you thought of it differently? That what happened to me actually helped me become stronger. It helped me be wiser. It helped me to help my children. It's helped me to write books. It's helped me to volunteer at a women's shelter, or whatever. I don't know, you insert the words or the outcomes there. But if you're just carrying it around and you're saying, oh, this trauma, this bad thing that happened to me, I'm just going to keep it with me and carry it around, and then it ends up being like an anchor to your past, it's going to be a lot harder to break free and heal and rise up. Because the goal isn't to forget what happened to you, right? You don't have to forget about it, because a lot of times people feel like if they forget about it, then that means what happened was okay. If I go on this massive healing journey and I am happy and healed and wonderful and have no issues, then that means what happened to me was not that bad, right? A lot of people actually feel that way. So they want to hold on to the trauma. They want to hold on to the past because it gives them something. It gives them validation, right? So the goal isn't to forget about what happened. It's to shift how that lives inside you and how you see it and how you perceive it. Because the only person that matters is you. But many survivors of abuse struggle with this, because if they heal, that means something else. So you may want to consider that for yourself if you are struggling. All right, now the very last thing that I want to mention here is that what no one else tells you about rising up and healing is that you might resist it, okay? No one tells you that you might resist it. You may not even think that makes logical sense when you're hearing me say this right now. But the reality is you might resist it. The brain is trying to do a couple things for you. It's trying to make you right. It wants to be right. And so if you believe something, it wants to show you all the proof and evidence of why that's true or why it should be true. Okay. So that's part of it. The other part is that you get something from staying stuck, or you get something from not moving forward or from not rising up, right? For instance, let's say that you were in an emotionally abusive relationship like me, and you want to go on a really great healing journey, and you have actively decided you're going to go on this or that retreat, you're going to enroll in yoga, you're going to do some subconscious healing, you're going to do all these things, but then you hit a massive roadblock and you're like, why? Like, what is happening? Why am I not able to do this? Why can't I push through? Well, you have to look at areas of resistance, and nobody tells you about this. If you have a fear of becoming the best version of you, then of course you're going to be resistant to becoming the best version of you. So you might be asking, well, why would I ever resist that? That sounds wonderful. I'd love to be the best version of me. Because often in our subconscious mind, there are things in there that we aren't fully aware of consciously that could be preventing us. And then it turns into like a self-sabotage thing, or, procrastination or unwillingness to, do certain types of things for ourselves. But resistance happens because your brain's trying to protect you. It's trying to keep you safe. And if moving towards healing sets off an alarm for your brain or makes it unsafe for any reason, then of course you're not going to do that. Okay? So let me give you an example of what this actually looks like. Along my personal healing journey, there was some resistance for me to heal. And part of this was because I believed on a subconscious level, I don't believe this anymore, but I did believe it, I've had to work through it, that if I am wildly successful with my books and wildly successful in my business and wildly successful helping other women heal, that if I am all those things, then when other people see what I went through, they'll think it wasn't that bad. How could it have been that bad? How could she have overcome all of these things? Like, it must have not been bad at all. And then that would invalidate me. It would have invalidated my abuse and the experience that I went through. So, the part that had to be changed was how I perceived it and how I thought about it, right? Because I was just making it mean that. That doesn't mean it actually is the truth. And that's the thing a lot of people get caught up in, is they believe that what they think is the truth. So it really takes a little bit of brain stretching to think about things in a different way, which is what I had to do. Well, what else could it mean? Could it mean that I'm just really, really, really skilled at healing myself with my subconscious methods? That, yeah, it was that bad, and two things can be true at the same time, that it was that bad and I just am that strong of a person to be able to overcome it. Two things can be true at the same time, right? So the example I'm giving you this is because I want you to see that there could be reasons personally for you that you may resist as well. And nobody really tells you about this. It's like, oh, I'm going to get out of this abusive relationship. I'm going to go to therapy. I'm going to start healing. And then before you know it, 10 years have gone by and you're like, I'm still at the same place that I always was. Like, what in the heck? Right? And I don't want that for you. I want you to be able to find the healing just like I have and just like my clients have. So your time is now. Your time to rise. Your time to be empowered, to stand up, to heal yourself is now. And this is why I wrote this book. This is why I wrote Radiate and Rise, because I have been where you are, where you might be right now. And I know what it takes to break free. And it starts inside your mind. So if today's episode spoke to you, then this book is your next step. And I don't want you to spend another year another month, even another week, feeling like you're trapped in the same cycle. So, like I said before, you can choose your action. You can take a step today, and that choice can be you to choose yourself. So here's what I want you to do. Pause this episode right now, head over to Amazon using the link in the show notes and grab your copy of Radiate and Rise. You can get it in an ebook or you can get it in a paperback. It's waiting for you, and I would love to know your thoughts after you've read it. And already, early readers of my book, advanced readers, have said this book is changing their lives, and I want that for you too. So don't wait, go grab your copy now. Remember, you are not broken, you are powerful, and you are meant to rise. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your support every week on this episode, and I hope you really enjoy my book. Talk to you next week.